Good Thursday morning. I was just reading, it's Luke's gospel today, okay? And I have to say, the text was so tricky, I looked up a commentary on it because I couldn't tell, honestly, I couldn't tell the good guys from the bad guys in it, okay? I mean, I actually had it backwards, okay? But it's an interesting gospel because he says, in a sense, that the bottom line is that Christ conquers all the forces of evil in the world, the demonic forces. That's the whole point of it, okay? And I wasn't sure how it plays out in the figures, in the example that he gives, the analogy that he gives, okay? And I'll show it to you in a second, okay? But there's a powerful lesson in this thing too. I take this very seriously, and that's the house divided against itself will fall. To me, that's Europe. It divided against itself when it abandoned its Christianity. It destroyed from within itself the very core of its strength. Its strength was a Judeo-Christian vision of human dignity. And once it sacrificed that and put it up and it made it sort of a product of the Enlightenment, which I'm not taking away from, especially democracy and the constitutional government, trust me. In that sense, I'm thoroughly in line with the Enlightenment. But when it de-Christianized it, in its root, it was Christian, but as it de-Christianized itself, it became, in a sense, hollow and vulnerable, so that the most educated, as it were, the most sophisticated people in the world, you'd have to argue, has got to be the period of the Enlightenment. Europe turned out to be a horror chambers in the 20th century. A house divided against itself will fall. There's a profound truth in that. In a way, it's demonic. When you look at what a demon is, if you want to see what the demonic is, the demonic are all the forces of separation and violence, things that rip apart first the human heart, the human soul, and then the human community. I don't know the devil as a person, but I know what the demonic is that which divides and destroys from within. It's not an external force, it's an internal one. When you look at the story of Hitler and the rise of Nazism in Germany, fascism in Italy, mostly Germany, okay, because it was so demonic. When you're looking at Hitler, you're looking into the face of the demonic, someone who is almost completely incarnationally evil, who has torn apart the human family. His persecution of the Jews, other peoples of the world. He is violence in itself. Almost, if you could say you need a demonic figure in history, he rates up with the top 2%. Now, I would put him at the top because he had all the benefits of 2,000 years of Judeo-Christian civilization, Roman law, human dignity, human rights. Hitler comes out of Kant, the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. Germany, my God, it's the foundational philosophy of human rights, and he does massive evil to it. Massive beyond human description, the horrors of the 20th century. That's the truth. If he is not, in a sense, the spirit of the demonic, there is no such thing. I'll tell you, though, his cousin Stalin ain't too far off. When you think of those who have abandoned Christianity in the name of power, what evil they have achieved and accomplished. I don't know the numbers, but I think it's an approximation of 80 million people were killed off throughout the 20th century through war and horror and abuse. And of all the horrors that the human heart is capable of, we pulled it all together. And it was interesting. It came from the most educated and centrally civilized. You could say, in terms of Western culture, the most civilized people of the world, the most scientific. And we produced the most horror. That's what happens when a house is divided against itself, when the heart is divided against itself. Right? That's demonic. We've lived through a demonic age. One pope called it the 20th century is the age of horror, the century of horror. I think it was not Francis. I think maybe it was John the 23rd. I don't know. I know John the 23rd called the Second Vatican Council, in part, was to re-evangelize the West. He saw what had happened, he lived through it. And to now spread the gospel throughout the world as a unifier. To not eliminate diversity, but to unite it under a single humanity, a profound humanism, and that is a Judeo-Christian humanism on human dignity. He saw that the 20th century had to be re-evangelized, or we would lead to another horror beyond description, and we are certainly capable of it. If it could happen in Germany, it can happen anywhere. I don't condemn anybody. I just say for the grace of God, there go I. Anything is possible. If it could happen there, it can happen anywhere. See, the divided heart is a dangerous heart. Whether it's a culture or a person divided against themselves. See? And when the lower instincts take over and they destroy intelligence and wisdom, when there is no longer any wisdom, but there is only power in the service of ego and vanities. Remember the Book of Wisdom, Vanity of Vanities. I'll tell you where it leads to, self-annihilation. See? That is the truth, and that's what our Lord must have been accused of being demonic. By the power of Beelzebub, he heals. And he says, look at the house of God. What did he say there? He says, he said, every kingdom divided against itself will be laid waste, and a house will fall against a house. You might as well have been talking about the 20th century European community, even Asia, but especially Europe. At least Asia has the excuse it never was deeply Christianized. It was pocketed. There were pockets of Christianity. Europe is Christian in its absolute foundations. You can't understand what Europe is unless you understand Christianity, Roman law, and science, the great traditions out of Greece, Rome, and as I would say, Israel, the Judeo-Christian vision, the Roman law. I said this before to you, and science. We created an entire civilization, but the soul of Western culture and civilization, the soul of Europe, the soul of America, is Judeo-Christian. It's Judeo-Christian. And you take that away, you take the soul out of the body, you've got just a dead body. And you can have a dead culture, a culture that has the externalities of life, but not the inner life. And that's what Europe became. John the 23rd saw that so clearly. That's why he knew we had to re-evangelize Europe. We had to put her soul back in, recover her soul. I think we in America are running that risk tremendously these days. We are secularizing at every turn. We secularize completely public education. I mean, I went to public schools. We celebrated all the religious holidays, Jewish, Christian, and if there were any Muslims, we would have done that too. But all of a sudden, started in 1960, Madeleine O'Hara, whatever her name is, and we have de-Christianized the public arena, the public order. Okay, keep it up. And we have secularized our morality to an nth degree. We've really reduced morality to, frankly, to what do I want? What's the word I want? But really to sentiment, to political correctness. Not truth. There is no pursuit of truth. It's political correctness, and who doesn't hurt whose feelings. We have silenced the moral voice in this country. We have absolutely silenced. It's not a moral voice you're hearing today. You're hearing political correctness, whatever the current rage is. We pit people against people. In the name of unity, we pit people against people. We categorize by categories, by classical categories. That's not morality. That's divisiveness with a vengeance. Depends on what club you belong to, what race, what gender, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. Where is the unity of a community of love? Huh? Where? And if there is, what's its foundation? What's its foundation? As secular as the founding fathers were of this country in the 18th century, they were not themselves religious people, but they understood the roots of civilization were Christian, and that's why it's replete with Christian reference. They knew they needed a moral foundation that was radically deep to found the humanism that was going to be the basis of the American Constitution. And they were right. They were right. We've just given that part of it up. I say that because I worry for my country. I worry about our culture. Not for me. I'll be dead within a decade. I really don't have any fear, personally, but I fear for our children and our grandchildren. A house divided against itself will fall. And we really risk that in this. We really deeply risk radical civil unrest in this country because we've been pitted one against the other. We don't have that unifying grace, that common, deep-rooted humanism. We have political humanism, political correctness, which is the essence of pure stupidity. If If you had any shred of wisdom, you'd run the other way. If you knew anything about history, anything about cultural history, anything about foundations of morality, you would run the other way. You would understand human rights in the most fundamental way, not a politically correct way, but a fundamental way. That's what you would know. You would know its ultimate Christian, Judeo-Christian foundation. And you would honor it and respect it, even if you're an atheist, because without it, it's a house divided against itself. It'll fall.